who is our global chair. She, as a little introduction for her, we can tell you that she is the global chair of Democrats Abroad and has been deeply involved in getting out the vote abroad since 2008. She is from Charleston, South Carolina, and is a lifelong Democrat with a passion for civil rights and voting accessibility. She has a background in IT services and digital media, lives in Prague with her husband and 2 children, and votes in North Carolina. So with this, let's give it to Julia. Thank you very much for being with us, and go ahead.
Well, thank you, Edgar, and it's a pleasure to see everybody today. It's 9:30 in the evening here, and I know it's the afternoon and morning for everyone around the world. So it's thanks for joining. This is so important because I'm the global chair, but there's so many aspects of this organization that have to do with the global organization, and that's what I wanted to talk to everybody about today. First of all, just a little bit of a background about how, my background in Democrats Abroad. I got involved in 2008, helping found the country committee. Like many of us, I was really interested in politics. I wanted to do something to help Democrats and get out the vote. Getting out the vote seemed very important after 2000 and 2004. And so 2008 was an important year for everyone trying to make sure Democrats won. So I helped found the country committee and got really actively involved. And then in 2012, I became the chair of the Czech Republic in August, and I was able to use the work that I had done as in IT and in media marketing to help really explode the vote in the Czech Republic, really make sure that as many Americans as we could possibly find got out and voted. And I thought to myself, my goodness, this is something I want to do on a larger scale. And so I got involved actively globally in 2013. I became the global secretary in 2015, and then I ran for global chair in 2017. And the entire time we realized there's a lot of opportunity for growth in Americans abroad voting. This is how do we go about it? How do we bring in technology? How do we bring in simple messaging? How do we overcome the challenges that Americans have abroad with voting? And that's always when you're thinking in terms of getting out the vote and leading an organization like this, you always have to keep in mind your mission, and then also the challenges that you have that you need to overcome, and they're going to change from one year to another, as we saw last year particularly, but also the opportunities of the moment. And so taking all those into account, that's been my pathway over the last many years, and now here we have it. We have done a phenomenal job, all of our teams around the world, getting out the vote. But back to being a global leader, global leadership, it runs from being a deputy to the global chair. We have very specific positions like counsel, treasurer, secretary. The chair is every role has certain tasks that the person is responsible for. The chair is I'll go into some of those responsibilities, but in our organization, because we don't have staff, we're all volunteers. I'm sure you guys all know that, but we're all volunteers. And the chair is both the chair of the state party, and also we actually run a lot of the executive director roles at other state parties. They have executive directors who help with administration and global and team management, but the chair is responsible for that too. So it's not only a volunteer position, but it's also it's a more than full-time position. One thing that's very important for everyone to remember is that the chair represents all regions. We're looking at, I might be based in EMEA, but I'm thinking about AP, I'm thinking about the Americas. It's really important to remember all country committees, from small to medium to big, to people who are not in country committees, are in development, in information, our precincts, et cetera. So we're really thinking, our teams are always thinking, how do we make sure that someone this person way far away who we don't have a committee in, how can they vote? This is what our strategy is going to be all about. And again, we're always considering our mission, which Edgar talked a little bit about, but really we have two major issues that we're always dealing with. We're always thinking about how do we get out the vote, then we're thinking about how do we make sure our voices are heard back in the United States? Since the other thing that's really interesting to think about from a global team point of view is that every year, the year is going to change a little bit because every year in the 4-year cycle has different challenges to consider. This year, because we are actually, Biden is in the White House, we're not an opposition team. We're going to have a different challenge and different opportunities than what we had in 2017. So that's really interesting to think about. We are really focused on legislation. We're really thinking about how do we how do we work with the Biden White House? How do we work with the House? How do we work with the Senate to make sure that our voices are being heard, our needs are being met? We are working with, now we're working with the Senate on SR1, what was formerly HR1, to make sure, we're trying to introduce amendment that will help further protect overseas voters. And this is part of one of many of different legislative outreaches that we're doing. We're working on the Equality Act. We're working on ERA. And again, we're working on, voting is such an important issue for us, and then also immigration. So what else does the chair do? What else do the global teams do? Well, of course, the chair is the person who organizes and directs the global committees and the caucuses. We're making sure that that everyone's remembering our mission. Every team has a submission as well. Every team has goals that they're interested in meeting. And our job is to understand those goals and what they're working towards, and also help lift people over those challenges, over the burdens. We always try to provide technology solutions. We try to provide financial support, et cetera. Another thing that the chair does, of course, is really focus on fundraising. I was really pleased. We're very successful in the last presidential cycle. We raised almost $1 million in the last 2 years, $995,000, to support our efforts, which is, really important as in the work that we do. The chair is also a spokesperson for the organization, so that it's funny. We don't speak as much to the press as people in bigger countries do, like in Mexico or the UK or Canada or Germany. Those chairs are going to have a lot more opportunities to speak with the press, but we are really working with the comms team to define the major messaging that we put out. So that's one thing that the global team is always thinking about as well. And again, one other very important thing that the chair does is listen and make sure that we understand, all of us need to think in terms of working together, making sure I'm listening to the country committees, I'm listening to the regions, I'm listening to the global teams, et cetera, and really understanding what their needs are. So when I come together with my team, with the XCOM, I can bring those messages to bear on solutions. So I think I have 2 minutes left, and I will stop now in case we want time for questions. Or should, Edgar, are we doing questions later?
Yeah, we are doing questions later. Everybody,
Okay.
Julia is going to be available in a speaker's room in the next breakout session to ask any questions that you may have. So thank you. Go ahead, Julia.
Oh, well, it's been my pleasure. And, as I wrap up my time as chair, it's been a wonderful, it's been wonderful to serve this organization. And I'm really looking forward to the next team coming on board. And again, one of our jobs as an XCOM, and one of my jobs as the chair, is to make sure that transition is incredibly smooth, and as much information as possible is transferred from that, the workup that I've done to the next generation and then they run with it and do even better stuff. So I'm looking forward to doing that in the near future. Only 69 days to go, I believe.
We will move on to our global leader discussion, and we'll swap a bit, and we'll start with Aaron Fishbone, and then we'll go with Martha. Let me read to you a bit about each one of them. So first, Aaron Fishbone, who lives in Slovakia and votes back in Washington State, is the Global Communications Director for Democrats Abroad. Aaron leads the global communications team of hardworking and passionate people all over the world who create content every single day to advance the mission of Democrats Abroad. In his spare time, Aaron is the Public Policy Director for Greenway, the largest e-mobility services provider in Central Europe, where he works to help develop laws and regulations to make the transition to a decarbonized mobility and energy system a success through the rapid uptake in electric vehicles. His two kids can rarely be heard in the background of many Democrats Abroad team calls. Indeed, yeah, well, that shows the challenges that we have these times, and it's nice to have you with us, Aaron. After Aaron, we'll have Martha McDevitt-Pugh. Martha is one of the 8 Democrats Abroad representatives on the Democratic National Committee, where she's a member of the DNC LGBT Caucus and also a member of the Women's Caucus. She's based in the Netherlands. She's a former chair of Democrats Abroad Netherlands and leads the Democrats Abroad Global LGBTQ+ Caucus. She votes in Oakland, California. And as we're running a bit late, I'd like to ask everyone to please stay a bit longer with us. There'll be a breakout room with country committees. And now we'll hear more from Aaron from the communications team. Aaron, the floor is yours, and I'll get to your slides.
Super. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Hi, everyone. Great. Thank you for having me. Thanks to the organizers for this event, Hispanic API Caucus. It's great to be having this kind of event to really reach out to other people beyond. I mean, that's the core missions of the global community. I mean, of all of us within DA, but especially of the communications team, is one of our top line messages is to reach and engage more Americans abroad. So I think this is a great step along the way because all of us will be doing that. Speak of kids, I have them. They've just returned. I'm speaking, so I am the Global Communications Director, which is one of the global teams within the global level of the organization. But I'm also going to be speaking a little bit about my story, but then also on behalf, I guess, of the other, explaining a little bit about the other global teams. Many of you heard them in the breakout rooms already, but they're all points where you can become involved in different topics and different issues and different ways of activism, forms of activism that you can engage with. So yeah, I have this one role, but there are other people doing similar jobs on other teams and other topic areas all around the world. So I have not had nearly as lengthy a history of involvement with DA as some of the previous speakers, but that's, I guess, more like Elizabeth. That's kind of the point, right? You can step in. You always have to start somewhere. So I live in Slovakia in Europe. I recently had my second child, our second child. Sorry, I hear them in the other room just now. We're at the witching hour. And I took paternity leave, and I was able to do that. So February of last year, and I knew that I wanted to become involved in the presidential election with a little bit of my spare time. Really wanted to be of that, make an impact and not, and be a part of that, be a part of winning. Well, a little bit of engagement with the communications team at the time, a little bit of organizational change within DA, and suddenly I found myself very, very involved in the communications team. And then from there, it was just a few more moves towards suddenly being asked to as the communications director. Which is not exactly how I envisioned it, but nonetheless, it's been an incredible experience thus far. Life is funny like that, you step in, you engage a little bit more, and suddenly you find yourself being asked to do ever more. It's been an incredible experience. So as Will said, it is an incredible, being involved in DA is an incredible that even though we're living abroad, even though you're living this maybe other life, and for me, I have a lot of friends and family and community back home, and I do feel detached from them in some way. Being a part of DA was a really meaningful way. It remains, but especially during the election, was a really meaningful way to stay connected to the issues, to the challenges that they were experiencing, to feel like and to actively be a part of a solution to the problems that my own friends and family were experiencing back home, and to feel like I was making a valuable, meaningful impact in that, in being the change and helping address some of those problems. And I think the election results and the role of Democrats abroad in influencing the election and winning certain states and pushing Georgia to a runoff and then winning the Senate really speaks for itself in terms of what was that impact. And if you want to learn more about the impact of Democrats abroad and all the country committees and global teams, you can find that on the events portion of our website. The people that I've met through DA, many of whom are on this call, but there are many people other regions or, in other regions who are just not on this call, an incredible group of people. They're organized, they're hardworking, they're passionate, they are all over the world. And so this is just a few of the members of the global communications team. We have, as you see, there's representation here from Belgium, from Canada, from the UK, from Germany, from France, from New Zealand, Finland, Switzerland, Slovakia, a dog from Switzerland, Ireland, UK, Spain, China, and we've had representation from Mexico. Onelica has pitched in pretty heavily various moments when we needed additional support, also for the creation of our Spanish language content kits to make sure that we were reaching the many bilingual or not English speaking citizens around the world. So it's really a truly global experience. And that's been incredible as well. We have our calls at a time when people can call in from the Americas, from Europe, and some of the Asian countries. So that's also gives it this very global feel. And it's been a really cool way to make my own contribution to the organization by building up and leading this team of incredible people. And not all are represented in this picture by any means. So it's just been a great opportunity. The global teams broadly there's about 8 of them. I think that's on the next slide. And as you see, there's people who are working on voting issues, voting rights, and getting out the vote. Many different ways of reaching people to make sure that they ballot. There's Call Hub, which is also known as the phone banking team. This is thousands of volunteers who are calling registered voters and DA members all over the world to make sure that they are aware of what they need to do in order to vote, that they are taking the steps to do so, and then following up to make sure that they have, in fact, actually done so. There's Vote from Abroad team, which is our nonpartisan voter service. So that's a separate website where people can go, doesn't matter if they're Democrat or Republican, and they can make sure that they fill out their documentation so that they are registered to vote in their home state and they're with their home local elections office. And there's an incredible group of people who run that website, who make sure that they have the factual information regarding voting rights issues for Americans abroad in each state. And then there's also a group of people who are focused on some of the social media and PR around just sharing that, because it is a nonpartisan voter tool, even though it is run by DA. And we work closely with that team to make sure that that message is getting out. By the way, if you're interested, they are also looking for some volunteers to join them on their social media side as well. So feel free to look for that as a form of engagement. There's the communications team, which we've talked about, and also there we have session around. There's the design team, who again we work very closely with, and increasingly closely as design and web become increasingly integrated in the world that we live in today. But they have a group of professional designers all around the world who work on all kinds of things. There's the IT team, who is enabling this conversation to happen, who run our website, run our membership database, and run so many other behind the scenes services, but nonetheless keep us functioning as a global organization, and keep us connected, and probably do many other things that I don't even know about, much less haven't mentioned on this in this 2-second description. Diversity and inclusion, the newest global team, and that's obviously making sure that we are really looking at who is represented on our teams. Are we doing the work that we can be doing to make sure that representation is taking place, all forms of representation, that we're structured in a way to make that technically possible, physically possible, and that we're reaching out to making sure that people who are not engaged, voices that are not engaged, perspectives are, and that we're doing everything we can in those regards. And then there's the fundraising team, who are helping raise money to make sure that we have the resources that we can, to have these IT tools, to have a wiki, to have a website, to make the phone calls we need in order to our main objectives of, again, reaching people, making sure they know about our work, they're participating in it, that they're voting, that they're taking the steps that they need to vote. The day-to-day experience of a global team lead is being reachable at all hours, being very active on Slack, communicating with people all over the world, and working with the global chair and the other global team leads to make sure that we're in communication, coordination, and I'd say reinforcing each other's work, and that the actual responsibilities of global team lead is different based upon their different, let's say, focus area and body of work. But nonetheless, we all work together to advance our shared objectives of spreading the word, advancing democratic priorities, and electing Democrats back in the United States. We are the margin of victory. So it's a great group to be a part of.
Thank you. Nice overview of not only the global team, but also all the different teams we have and all the different opportunities there are for volunteers, those that want to get involved. Thank you so much for that presentation and for the work you do in the communications team. Martha, and Martha is actually one of our representatives, one of the 8 representatives in the Democratic National Committee. And she'll tell us a bit more about that and also about the Global Executive Committee of Democrats Abroad. Martha, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Aaron, for the great overview of the global teams, and to the AAPI Caucus and Hispanic Caucus for organizing this terrific event. Great to be here today. So I have 2 global roles inside of Democrats Abroad. I am one of the 8 members of the Democratic National Committee for representing Democrats Abroad. I'm also co-chair of the Global LGBTQ+ Caucus. So I'll try to maybe weave those 2 stories a little bit together as I outline some of the global work that we do. So I came to Democrats Abroad a couple of years after I moved abroad, and I moved to the Netherlands for 2 reasons. One was love, to be with my partner, and now my wife, for 20 years. A great reason. And the other reason was the Defense of Marriage Act, which was a piece of legislation. It was a law in America that said that no benefits could be given to anyone in a same-sex marriage or relationship in any way. So I was completely excluded from immigration in the United States. And I discovered after a couple of years in the Netherlands, planning to go back to the US, that there was no pathway for me. And after being pretty sad and upset about that for a while, I realized that even if we couldn't change things overnight in the Bush administration, what we could do is we could create community, and we could create visibility of the community, like the fact that there are American citizens who can't live in the United States. So my pathway was organizing an initiative around that, which grew into a foundation, and it was a very natural fit with Democrats Abroad. So some of our board members, Bob Breaker, who I think is in this call, was a member of our foundation, and we started a bit rolling into Democrats Abroad leadership roles. Both because the issue that we were working on, which is to include same-sex partners in US immigration law, was a perfect issue for Americans who live abroad. It's something that absolutely impacts the DA community. So it was something that we could work on inside of Democrats Abroad. So DA really picked up that issue, took it as part of the congressional door knocks that we do every year, which are really terrific. If you ever get a chance to go on a congressional door knock, either in person or a virtual one, it's really a great opportunity to engage and to learn how our government works, and to share whatever you are passionate about and care about, and make a difference. Democrats Abroad was one of the first organizations anywhere to pass a resolution in 2006 supporting the inclusion of permanent partners in US immigration law. And so we worked for a very long time. We worked for 12 years on this particular topic. And my first introduction to the DNC was in 2007. So as we were creating, we had very many communities around the world of love exiles, which is what we call ourselves, who were locked out of the United States. And so Democrats Abroad embraced our topic. Bob and I were invited to Paris to speak at a Democrats Abroad meeting. And Connie Board, who might also be in this call, said, you need to bring this issue to the DNC. Now, I had no idea anything about how you could bring an issue to the DNC. Nevertheless, we bought plane tickets and worked to get some time on the agenda of the DNC LGBT Caucus. So what I learned there is that the DNC is a body of people that meet on a regular basis twice a year. Connie Board at that time was a member, and so she felt that there was an issue that needed to be brought to the attention of, let's say, the community and network of people who are the Democratic National Committee. So we showed up. We just went to Washington, D.C. in the winter and signed in to join a meeting of the Democratic National Committee. And I had no idea, but it was completely open to the public. There might be a little bit more security around it these days, but at the moment, the meetings are virtual, and you can find them on YouTube, and you can join them. And I think that they will become in person at some point as well. And we took our issue, and we worked a couple of months to try to get it on the. When we arrived in Washington, it wasn't on the agenda yet, but we got it on the agenda, and we were able to speak about our issue. And what I want to say about that is that by being inside of this network of people who are elected from all of their states, and then all the other people and you could be among those if you showed up. But all the other people who come to these meetings, you can start to make connections and advance issues. And that was what we found. Just like small conversations. So for example, after we spoke in the LGBT caucus about the right of Americans to bring their partner in the United States, one of the staff who supports the chair of the DNC came up to me and said, this is an issue that we can talk about, that the chair of the DNC can talk about. Now in 2007, you should realize that marriage equality was not an issue that anybody could talk about and really stand for in the DNC. Whether that's right or wrong, we can discuss, but it wasn't a very easy issue at that time because of culture wars. So this was an issue that they could pick up. Another person came up to me, was the chief of staff for Tammy Baldwin, who was in Congress at the time, and said, there will be a congressional hearing. We're going to work on a congressional hearing before the summer. So that didn't happen that year. It happened 2 years later, but Democrats Abroad was able to submit written testimony. One of our members testified, and we became very much involved in issues advocacy, both as a DA immigration rights task force, so around LGBT immigration rights. We were able to submit testimony and be involved there, and really forward that issue from Democrats Abroad. Our task force then became a global caucus inside of Democrats Abroad. We've been a caucus for a while, and the last time we haven't been working so much as legislation, because legislation is not something that's being forwarded under the last 4 years under that administration. There wasn't any way to get things to happen. But we're now in a really terrific situation where the Equality Act, which was first introduced in 1974, like a really long time ago, and which has really struggled to get traction, but that would guarantee the rights of LGBTQ Americans and residents as civil rights, is now passed the House last week, and we have an opportunity to advance that in the Senate. So as a global DNC member and a member of the DNC LGBT caucus, and as a caucus co-chair, we're really eager to start to really forward issues into legislation. And so that's a really terrific opportunity. I think it's great fun to be able to work and to forward the issues that we care about. And what I'd like to say is that in the past, and very often DA is working on issues that affect specifically Americans abroad. So making sure we're not forgotten, making sure we're taken into account, making sure our issues are addressed, whether it's in voting rights or tax or immigration. But with the growth of the DA global caucuses, and this meeting is just an example of that, but as we have more caucuses now, and they're pretty incredible, I think that that's an incredible growth area for Democrats abroad. So I think really watch this space and see what the caucuses do. But I think as Democrats abroad, we have a great opportunity to work on issues and legislation that don't just affect Americans abroad, but to bring our unique perspectives to all kinds of legislation in the United States, whether that's healthcare, whether that's equality, and to use our voices and our stories. My experience in Democrats abroad is when we bring our stories, when we share what we care about, what we're passionate about, whether that's in congressional door knocks, whether that's through all of our communication channels that Erin's just talked about, that we can really make an impact and make a difference. And honestly, it's a lot more satisfying to be engaged and to be sharing your story and to be making a difference than to not be. So I think that that's one of the great opportunities that Democrats abroad represents and provides for all of us. And so I'm pretty excited about what we can do. And it's all long-term work. We worked 12 years to win immigration rights for same-sex couples. We started when nothing was possible except, like, let me just see what little thing I can do today. But, making change is always about just seeing, like, what little thing I can do today. It's not about getting the whole thing, like, to happen overnight, but it's all of us and all the little things we can do. So that's really my call to action for everybody is, find something that really inspires you and get involved in one of these many local or country or global teams and do your little bit, because it really is collectively all of us that make the difference. and do take the opportunity that we have through the DNC. You know, we have 8 representatives there. You know, we're on the ground. The meetings are open. Make sure that the issues you care about get shared and articulated within Democrats Abroad. Reach out to us. We will come to country meetings and chapter meetings as DNC members and share about the work at the DNC, because I don't have time to go into great detail about that right now. But we're really there to represent all of you. So please, please reach out to us, invite us, involve us, and we will be doing ongoing regular calls as well, so that we can share about what's going on at the DNC. I think the last thing I want to say about my global team, the LGBTQ plus caucus, is that
Martha, can I interrupt you there really quickly, just to warn most of the country rooms to please, they can go ahead. Everyone else can stay with you and the rest in the main room. So for your last message to everyone, thank you and sorry about that. Go ahead, Martha.
No, that's perfect. That's perfect. Yeah. So my other call to action is to really invite everybody who has a passion for equality to join us to get the Equality Act through the Senate. It's going to be a really interesting journey together. We need all of your stories and all of your passion for making our country more equal. Please reach out to the LGBTQ Caucus. Our email is lgbtqcaucus@democratsabroad.org, and you can also join us on our caucus page on the Democrats Abroad website.